Okay, next is Chapter 15, Salvage and Overhaul. During this chapter, we're going to talk about overhaul, we'll talk about salvage, and we'll talk about methods to put out and find hidden fires. We'll start with overhaul. All operations conducted after the main body of the fire has been extinguished is the overhaul operation. Basically, we're searching for and we are putting out hidden or any remaining fires, placing the building and all of its contents into a safe condition. And at some point, we're going to look at and determine the cause of the fire. Also recognizing and preserving evidence when it comes to possible arson. Tools and equipment, from pike poles, plaster hooks, to prying tools, power saws, drills, screwdrivers, buckets and carryalls, shovels, bell hooks, pitchforks, and even our thermal imaging camera. As with anything in the fire service, each step of the way we think about safety. And these are the steps to establish safe conditions. First and foremost, we want to inspect the premises and ensure that it is safe that we're able to get in there and start finding and putting out the small hidden fires. With this, we'll develop a plan. We'll put together teams and then we'll implement those teams in the areas that are needed. We'll provide needed tools and equipment to do the job, and then we'll eliminate or mitigate any hazards. Toxic gases is something that we've talked about in several of our presentations, and it certainly comes into play here because we still have smoldering, we still have heated up materials that are off-gassing and producing smoke. We also have a great deal of heat in these cases, and the toxic gases is something that you cannot see. Most of these gases are colorless and even odorless, and so the only method of detection would be to have a gas monitor that senses these types of gases. So this makes it a significant threat during overhaul stage. It can also exist in dangerous concentrations, even if air appears free of smoke. Carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide are common, but others can also be present. If inhaled or absorbed through the skin, these can cause risk to our firefighters. One of the things that we can do to mitigate this is to deploy our air monitoring devices and monitor for some of these chemicals and gases. But the biggest thing that we can do is wear our PPE and our SCBA until overhaul is complete. Other hazards and safety concerns can be weakened floors, cuts and punctures and burns from debris, broken glass, nails, sharp objects, things that can injure the eyes, strains and sprains, and even fatigue. And again, all of these are preventable by simply wearing all of our PPE, wearing our SCBA breathing air. We should have charged hose lines present during the overhaul stage. That way, if we do find hidden fires, we get air to them and they flame up, we can finish the extinguishment process. Work in teams of 2 or more, which is something that we should be doing anyway in the fire service. Maintain your situational awareness and be cognizant of your exit routes. Maintain a RIT team throughout the operation. Many departments will disband their RIT teams once they get to overhaul, and this is one of the stages that we need to maintain that. There's been plenty of case studies where firefighters have fallen through floors and lost their lives because we couldn't remove them or we didn't recognize they were in trouble on time. We want to monitor the need for personal rehabilitation, so we're still rotating people through rehab. Again, we should be wearing our SCBA during this process, and it does cause fatigue. Beware of hidden gas and electrical utilities, and then continue using the accountability system throughout the process. When we evaluate the stability of a structure, we do so before we're searching for these hidden fires, and we want to evaluate the general area, the structure itself, and then the general areas that we're going to be working in for structural integrity. Some of the things that help us out with this was how intense to the fire, and how much, or what was the volume of the fire, and how far did it extend, and at this point, has it weakened any structural members. Also, we've used water to control the fire, and we must remember that water weighs 8.3 or so pounds per gallon, and we've added a lot of additional weight if we've used a lot of water on your floors and on your walls. So we need to take this into consideration as well. Indicators for possible loss of structural integrity can be weakened floors, spalled concrete. When you see spalling and broken away from heat parts of concrete, weakened steel and roof members, steel members that have begun to twist and offset, weakened roof trusses, open mortar and wall joints, melted wall ties holding brick veneer and curtain walls together, heavy storage on the upper floors, any pooling of water that we haven't removed on upper floors, and large quantities of wet insulation. Some of the indicators for hidden fires, one is by sight. We see discoloration of the materials. You may see or recognize peeling paint, emissions of smoke or smoke coming from small cracks in the walls and plaster. You may see rippled wallpaper and cracked plaster, and even burned areas. Another way is with our touch. We can feel the heat through the walls and the floors. You can take a gloved hand and sense heat through it. Another method is by sound. Again, we're using our senses. You hear popping and cracking of fire burning, hissing of steam. Electronic sensors that we may use are the thermal heat signature detection from a thermal imaging camera, and then also infrared heat detectors. Thermal imaging cameras greatly reduce the time needed to perform a search. They are able to limit secondary structural damage. We recognize where our hot spots are, and we go straight to them. We can take care of them instead of tearing up a whole lot of what doesn't need to be torn up. And then we may not provide quality images of items behind reflective materials. So one thing we do have to remember, anything that would produce a reflection, whether that be stainless steel refrigerator or appliance, glass in an appliance, glass itself, or mirrors, all will produce a reflection. So you have to look at the image and the temperature signatures on the image, and it does take a degree of training to use thermal imaging cameras. If there's discrepancies between the image on the camera and signs of fire, the space should be opened and then visibly inspected. Remember that the cameras are a tool, and anytime that you suspect, regardless of what image you see on the camera, if you see other senses such as sound or sight, and you're using those, and you see a little smoke coming from an area, but it doesn't show very much heat, go ahead and open that up and take care of it. Typically, our overhaul procedures begin in the area of most severe fire involvement, and the incident commander and lead investigators should coordinate when overhaul should begin. So we want to make sure that we were able to put out as much fire as we can with as least damage as we can, especially if we suspect that this could be a set fire. We're looking for fire extinction should begin as soon as possible after the incident commander gives the order. So we want to determine the path that the fire traveled. If floor beams have burned ends where they enter a party wall, we want to flush out our voids with water and inspect the wall. Check your insulation materials and remove to extinguish if necessary. A lot of times blown in type insulation has to be shoveled out and completely removed. It's very easy for small embers to lay buried in this type of material, and even if it's wet and damp over time can smolder that long and then eventually flame up. We end up going back for a rekindle. The big thing is we do not want to make random openings. Make sure that we do have signs of whatever method that we use to determine an area to open up. We want to pull open burned windows or doors to expose the inner parts of the frame and then visually verify that it is extinguished. When fire burns around a combustible roof or a cornice, then we want to open it up and inspect it. Oftentimes you'll see smoke will roll out of soffits on the outside and in and around fascia board, and sometimes that's just smoke leaking through the cracks. Once we get everything put out and there's no more smoke, it goes away. But there are times that it has produced enough heat, especially if it's gotten into the attic, to catch those items on fire from behind. So those are the times that we got to pull it and inspect it. In balloon frame type construction, we got to check the attic and the basement all for fire extension. Remember, in balloon frame construction, the studs in the wall go from the ground floor to the top. There is no platform construction or no fire breaks within the wall itself. Search fires in concealed spaces below floors, above your ceilings, or within the walls and partitions. We want to move furnishings to locations where they will not be damaged. Cover the furnishings with a salvage cover if it is not possible to remove them. We want to remove only enough wall, ceiling, or floor to verify that we have extinguishment. Try not to disturb weight-bearing members. To locate fire extension into the wall cavity, inspect openings. There may be electrical receptacles that we can look in behind the plate. Return air ducts, heating vents, telephone connections, and cable connections are all areas that we want to look for extension. Inspect walls and ceilings in kitchens, bathrooms, and utility rooms if they show evidence of fire spread. We may consider whether concealed spaces contain electrical wiring, gas piping, or plumbing. Give consideration to future repair of the structure as well. Pulling ceilings. Use your pike poles or your plaster hooks to pull away the covering, whether it be plaster, whether it be sheetrock. One thing is you don't want to stand directly under the area to be opened up where debris directly falls on you. Position between an area being pulled and the doorway if at all possible, and always wear again your full PPE and respiratory protection during this process. Burning items, small items that may be burning or still smoldering, can be submerged in your carry-all with water or small buckets. Large items should be taken outside and then extinguished. Coordinate everything that you remove from a structure with a fire investigator if you have one involved. We can also use wetting agents such as Class A foams to extinguish hidden fires. Break up bales of items to extinguish the fires within. Next on our list is gross decontamination following our overhaul process. And certainly it's a messy process when you're breaking apart sheetrock and plaster and you're pulling away ceiling, and you're going to get insulation product is going to fall on you, and you're inadvertently going to get these particles on you. And so at this point we want to do a gross decon at the scene. All the PPE is the best practice to prevent carcinogens from absorbing through the skin. So one of the steps is to spray off, just spray off with a water hose on the scene all of the big chunks of contaminants on your bunker gear. And then the next step would be to use a soft bristle brush, damp towels to remove any other debris on your PPE. Remove all your gear if possible. Then use wet wipes, baby wipes, or wet towelettes, to remove soot from your head, face, jaw, neck, under your arms, hands, and lower legs. So as much as we can possibly wipe down and wipe off, that's what we want to do on the scene. We'll discard all these in a trash bag or a bio bag that we can later discard. We want to use Again, your hose line to rinse off your PPE equipment, and don't forget about your boots, rinsing them off good, getting the debris off them. And then bag contaminated equipment and gear for travel to the station. And one of the reasons why we're bagging things now is so we don't contaminate the cab of our vehicle and later have to spend a lot more time deconning and cleaning it out as well. Our next step would be to rotate through the showers immediately upon returning to the station. So we're still putting things back in service, open up your showers, and get firefighters rotating through the showers as soon as we possibly can. And then clean gear and apparatus interiors immediately after cleaning yourself at the station. Next, we're going to talk about how to conserve property at a fire scene. Property conservation, or well known as salvage, is an important part of our loss control program. Save property, reduce further damage from water, smoke, heat, and exposure. This includes pre-incident planning and knowledge of procedures, tools, and your equipment. Often necessary to improvise due to the unique situations and limited equipment, and a lot of times even in our world, limited personnel. Protection of property from weather and trespassers is critical. So we just don't want to leave structures open. You know, we want to screw doors shut or lock doors shut, and if we've broken windows out, board up windows, place salvage covers in areas to prevent further damage. Why do we do this? What's the purpose? We do everything to protect property without compromising life and health. So fire, smoke, and suppression activities contribute to the damage of the property. Inadvertently, when we're doing our job and we're putting out fires, we are causing some damage to the property. So it's good practice as loss control techniques. Use those techniques throughout the incident as we go along. A lot of times you'll find that salvage and overhaul going hand in hand. While overhaul is taking place and hidden fires are being extinguished, you'll also have property and furniture being grouped and covered, and drilling holes in the floors to let water out and those kind of things. Equipment that we use for salvage covers, electrical tools, there may be mechanical tools as well, plumbing tools, carpentry tools, drills and screws and hammers and nails and those kind of things to board things up, mop squeegees, and also buckets to help clean up water and other debris. We'll start with salvage covers. Salvage covers are either large canvas or vinyl covers that we carry on the truck. Each truck will carry various sizes and runners of their covers to be used to cover furnishing, belongings, groupings, and even we'll talk about constructing water chutes and catch-alls and carry-alls. In some cases, we're carrying automatic sprinkler kits, and these are a part of our salvage and overhaul equipment. Anytime that we have an automatic sprinklers in play and we need to be able to shut the water off, whether we wedge the head and get it to shut off, or we turn the water source off to it altogether. Carry-alls can be made out of canvas as well, with handles stitched in, and also they can be buckets, smaller buckets and smaller bins. And this is basically used to carry out smoldering materials to the outside of the structure and further extinguish without doing more water damage inside the structure. Floor runners basically are a short width salvage cover that's used to place down narrow hallways, and basically we're keeping damage to carpets and floors as we walk in and walk out with debris on our shoes and boots. Possibly we want to make sure we're not tracking those things in mud, muddy water, so on and so forth. Dewatering devices and vacuums. There could be backpack vacuums are common, carried on truck companies in the fire service. Squeegees and brooms as well to help channel, push, and even suck up water. One firefighter salvage covers folds and spreads. Basically, your salvage covered are rolled and folded in a manner that we can deploy them by a single firefighter. So we would want to roll that cover over the object, and whether it be rolled or folded. And then we will balloon that out over the objects. Now this is the two firefighter slide right here, but under the single you'll just take the ends and you'll windmill your hands up and out and spread that over the object. And it is a little bit easier with two of you, but it can be done with one. Remember that salvage begins upon arrival and continues until the last unit leaves the scene. So we begin this process from when we first start operations and putting water on the fire to the time that we board everything up and we're ready to secure the property and leave. This may begin during fire suppression. It may be necessary to delay suppression to remove vital elements. The incident commander is going to make decisions on whether we delay suppression or not. Salvage procedures. Choice of the procedures is going to depend on a few things. The type, size, and quantity of the contents. Number of personnel available is probably our biggest one, as whether how much we can carry out or what we're going to cover. And then the extent and the location of the fire, and in any current weather conditions. Can we move things outside, or is it better off covering things and leaving them inside? One of the things we can do is move contents to a safer location. Some residents will request that we remove some extreme valuables from the property altogether, and they will take those into their possession. Removing contents from the structure altogether, and then protecting contents in place with your salvage covers. And this is where we group furnishings and belongings in a group, and then we'll cover them in place inside the structure like we see in this part of the slide. So we may move contents to safer location inside. This could be away from the smoke, fire extension, or some water and water runoff that's occurring. It's effective when fire is limited and it's not likely to spread any further. Basically, we've got everything out, but we do want to move some things out of the general area. It is effective when weather conditions would damage contents if they were moved outside. And then we want to cover contents with our salvage covers or raise off the floor to guard against secondary damage. When we remove contents, we can block doors. Opening and closing doors may interfere with the flow path, so we can block those or chalk those open, if you will. Stack contents on dry surfaces away from debris. We want to protect from theft and vandalism as well. Tell the owner and secure the contents. Leaving contents in place, this is where we will gather contents we'll group them together into groups basically in the center of a room if at all possible, and then we'll use our salvage covers for protection, especially from water runoff and other debris. Try to create a high point in the furniture group that allows for runoff. Any fragile items can be placed on something soft like beds, couches, so on and so forth. And we want to raise furniture up off a wet carpet when possible. In commercial occupancies, this may be difficult to cover all of the contents. Stock that is susceptible to water damage should be raised off the floor when possible. If they have pallets or they're on pallets, can be stacked on another pallet, might be a method. 2 pallets high. Water chutes and catch-alls can be constructed and used to route and channel water to the floor for later removal. And then we want to be extremely cautious on highly piled stock. Removing large quantities of water. One of the ways we can do this is create water chutes and get our water to run off. We want to make use of existing sanitary piping system if at all possible. Create scrubbers. We can locate and clean clogged drains. And then we can remove toilet fixtures to add that extra large drain. Water chute is simply we've used a salvage cover and we've rolled it, or we've rolled the edges to create a chute. You can use pike poles to help you form those edges and also give you rigidity and something to hang it off of as well. And these are used to drain water runoff through doors, windows, and out away from your open areas. A catch-all is basically a salvage cover that the edges have been rolled up, and it's going to hold a pond or a pool of water. And we'll realize that a rolled up berm on your salvage covers 2-3 inches high can catch hundreds of gallons of water. We can splice our chutes to our catch-alls. Just want to make sure in the direction that the water is running that we run over top of what we're channeling it to. That way the flow of water doesn't get on the areas and things below that seam. Covering other openings, if we've made openings or the windows and glass was busted out either due to the fire or due to us, we want to try to use some material, whether that be OSB material, preferably to keep people from re-entering this. Often, especially if we feel like that this is a set fire that will do this, oftentimes the owner or the property owners will go ahead and start this process as well. And if they've started it prior to us leaving, we'll help them finish securing the windows and doors. With any of our equipment, we've got to be able to clean our salvage covers. This is not a hard task, but basically they got to be brushed off with soapy water, rinsed off, and then we have to allow them to dry. So we're going to clean them up with that detergent, brush or broom as necessary, and then get them hung up so they can completely dry. If we store them slightly wet, they tend to mildew, especially if we don't use them in a while, and then you have a problem on your hands with musty, mildewy tarps. And it's really bad with canvas because it's very hard to get out of canvas once it starts. Your synthetic covers don't require as much maintenance, a little bit easier to clean off. Again, they can be folded wet, but they need to be really dried out again, because even the rubberized coating, it can mildew in there, and it can be cleaned off, but it is a little tougher to clean off. It's better to go ahead, get things cleaned up, keep things back in service. And the last thing for today is inspecting and repairing our salvage cover. So we want to look for any rips, holes, tears, or cuts, mark them, and then we can use repair kits to repair these holes with tape or other patches. If it's canvas, it can be stitched on. Some of the rubberized materials, you have a glue-on rubberized cement that will work. They can also be stitched and sealed as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be taken out of service completely. Some fire departments will use the disposable type tarps or salvage covers like you see in the photograph here, and once those are done, you can repair some small stuff, but if they get in really bad shape, it's just as easy to toss those and purchase new ones. They're fairly inexpensive. For your nice tarps and your nice covers, especially your canvas ones, you want to take good care of them. They are expensive, but they are also designed to last a long time. So this concludes this presentation on salvage and overhaul. Today we're not going to get deep into the investigative side and securing the scene, but know that there is a part two where we're going to further secure the scene. If we do have an investigation going on, we may be involved with helping either the incident commander or the investigator determine a cause and origin of the fire.